Imagine you're a British soldier stationed in the Highlands of Scotland in 1745, right in the midst of the Jacobite Uprising. A majority of your peers are on the European continent supporting the Habsburgs, fighting in the War of Austrian Succession. And the Jacobite Scots have been using this distraction to launch their rebellion in order to get the Catholic Stuart family back on the throne after the family was removed during the Glorious Revolution of 1688. There's even rumors of unhappiness in the American colonies. There's a lot going on around the empire. But you're up here in the Highlands of Scotland, stationed at the Ruthven Barracks, one of 4 barracks that has been constructed to quell the unrest of the Jacobites, who have been flaring into uprisings every few years for the last 50 or so. The barracks here is nice enough, built on top of an old castle motte, essentially a hill that gives you a pretty good vantage point all around you. The castle that stood here was heavily damaged during the first Jacobite uprising back in 1689. That's a little disconcerting. The barracks is spacious enough though, room for 120 soldiers and 28 horses in the stables. It would certainly be formidable both as a defensive position as well as a starting ground if you had to start campaigning. But that's with a full complement of men and horses. The war on the continent is the current priority, which means that besides you, there's only 14 other men here. Sergeant Malloy is in charge, and he's doing his best to keep the barracks as intimidating as possible, but it's pretty obvious that there's not many of you here. And that might be a problem, because the Jacobite rebels are frightening. They fight fiercely and aggressively. The last thing you need is a bunch of them organizing together and making an attempt at taking the barracks. But at the end of August, that's exactly what happens. 300 of them show up, demanding you surrender the barracks to them. Sergeant Malloy is stalwart, denying them despite the fact that they threaten to hang you all. After some heated words, they depart, though they don't seem to go too far. Sergeant Malloy most certainly continues to shore up the defenses, and all of you are on high alert. This is for good reason, because half of them come back after nightfall. 150 show up. They set fire to the gate, but you and your fellow soldiers are able to get it put out before too much damage is done. The Jacobite who had the courage to start the fire may have been a bit too bold though, and was shot and killed after his feat. Another was shot during the night, but so was a British soldier, who peeked above the rampart even though Malloy told everyone to keep their heads down. Every man lost makes it that much more difficult to defend the barracks. The fight is sporadic throughout the night. Just before dawn, Sergeant Malloy is able to speak to the Jacobite leaders though. They demand surrender. He declines, but he allows them to collect their dead and help the wounded. They appear to leave the general area and a tentative cessation begins. You and your fellow soldiers bury your friend, and things seem to calm down in the area, even though you know this probably won't be the end of collisions with the Jacobites. They are fighting aggressively around Scotland, and it appears things may be culminating as you get word that the uprising isn't being extinguished. This would be exposed about 6 months after the fight, on a cold day in February 1746. Sergeant Malloy is still in charge, now promoted to lieutenant, and men have come and gone, but you're still concerningly undermanned. Again, 300 Jacobite soldiers showed up at the base of the barracks. This time, though, they were led by a man named John Gordon, a major general, who had been battling his way around the Highlands for almost 60 years at this point. You have the advantage of the high ground and shored up defenses, but Gordon brought cannons. Lieutenant Malloy had an incredibly difficult decision to make at this point. The fight was pretty much determined. 1 or 2 shots from a cannon and 300 men were going to flood into the barracks. Whoever didn't get killed in the fighting would be hanged. It was over before it began. Lieutenant Malloy relinquished the barracks to the Jacobites, and you all retreat, while they proceed to set fire to the structures. But they only caused so much destruction. After the British left, the barracks would go on to be used by the Jacobites one last time. This would come after the Battle of Culloden, 3 months later in April, which is where the Jacobites would essentially be defeated. After news of the defeat, 3,000 Jacobites gathered here at the barracks in preparation for continuing the war. Their commander, Lord George Murray, would shortly receive word that the fight was over and that every man should do his best to ensure their own safety. Repercussions were expected by the victorious British, and those who had fought for or supported the Jacobite fight would certainly be executed as traitors. It was then that the men set fire to the barracks one last time and dispersed across the Highlands. Not much has changed since that day in April 1746. The barracks is almost exactly how it appeared when the Jacobites departed, with only the stone structure remaining. The rains have steadily washed away the charring on the rock, but you can stand exactly where the clashes occurred, with the vantage point of both Brits and the Jacobites, where a small battle was won and also where a war ended. If you'd like to see more, check out this video here. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon subscribers for helping me get here. As always, until next time, get lost.